You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. Deuteronomy 6:8 ESV. Continuing on, her fourth video, Repairing the Romans Road. How Israel's sin figures into Paul's story. Paul on God's timing. In other epistles, Paul makes a big deal about this. Galatians 4:4 and Ephesians 1:10, he says Jesus came or was sent in the fullness of time. Jesus brought redemption at the proper time, 1 Timothy 2:6. And then in Romans 5:6, for while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. And this, for while we are still weak, that's not your life before conversion. No, he's talking about human history. That's the only way to make sense of at the right time Christ died. Human history before the cross, and then afterwards it all changes. So, what was the timing for? What is it about the timing that was so important? Well, let's keep in mind, we need to figure out why it was the right moment for Jesus to die, and what was his dying supposed to represent, or did it represent? How it was the right time to condemn sin in the flesh of Jesus. God condemned sin. He punished it. He passed judicial sentence upon it. It got condemned. It was a judgment day, if you will. So, how does that all work? And how is this also related to something that was in the last video, how the law increased sin in human history? All right, Paul paints a picture in Romans 1:18 and following of sin getting worse and worse. And he says the law actually helped that process along. It degraded the whole situation further. Why would God want that to happen? Yeah, see the previous video for more about that. But that left us with the question of why, and that's what this video is going to try to start answering. So what you need to remember, humanity was always sinful, but God sent the flood because a certain point was reached. All right, God promised the land of Canaan to Abraham, but not yet. At least not in Abraham's lifetime, because it wasn't yet right to judge the inhabitants of the land of Canaan. They weren't yet bad enough. Remember what he said, and they shall come back here. He's talking about Abraham's descendants, the generations. They shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So he doesn't judge them yet. Now Sodom and Gomorrah, they were an exception. They got judged earlier, but not the rest of the land. So let's look at this background then for Israel, because Israel goes through this dynamic. Their sin becomes complete at certain points in time. For example, after being judged for sin in the time of Eli, the high priest, God did not destroy Israel, but reestablished the nation with kings and a temple. So they actually became better through God's grace after becoming worse. And then it happened all again. After being judged for sin by the exile of Babylon, God did not destroy Israel, but reestablished the nation with a new temple. But then again, they got worse. When Jesus came, Israel was in sin again to the unprecedented point of being haunted by demons. There's nothing like that in the earlier scriptures. So the result is Jesus took all the judgment that had been building. For God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, he condemned sin in the flesh. Judgment day fell, but this time on Jesus. So look at these parallel passages in Romans. If we go back to Romans 3:5a, where Paul, speaking for Judaism, says, our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God. Remember, we talked about how the righteousness of God is demonstrated in him providing Jesus, providing salvation. So look at this. Oh yeah, let's review this. The righteousness of God, God's character is vindicated because he brought to the world the promised salvation by giving us Jesus to die for sin. And our is Israel. Israel's unfaithfulness in rejecting Jesus was the way God provided salvation for the world, Jew and Gentile alike. And by the way, any nation would have done the same thing. Israel's not exceptional, Israel's exemplary. So, our unrighteousness serves to show the righteousness of God. At the climax of his argument, remember his argument goes from 1:16 to the end of chapter 11. At the climax, he starts saying this repeatedly. Through their trespass, salvation has come to the Gentiles. So, through our unrighteousness, the righteousness of God has been demonstrated in salvation to the Gentiles. Alright, let's look at another passage. 11:12, the very next verse. Their trespass means riches for the world, and their failure means riches for the Gentiles. So, our unrighteousness, their trespass, here he's speaking from the standpoint of the Gentiles, talking about Israel from outside. So, their trespass, our unrighteousness, That shows the righteousness of God, which is riches for the world. All right, God's been righteous. He's had mercy on the whole world and all the nations, the Gentiles, and also on Jews as well, as we'll see. So again, our unrighteousness sure serves to show the righteousness of God. Their rejection means the reconciliation of the world. All right, our unrighteousness from the standpoint of Israel, their rejection from the way it looks outside Israel, means the righteousness of God is shown. The reconciliation of the world is accomplished. Oh, let's do it again. He says to the Gentiles, you have received mercy because of their disobedience. All right, why have they received mercy? Because of Jesus dying on the cross. So there you go. That shows the righteousness of God. He's kept his promise. He's delivered the world. Paul argues throughout this is both for Jew and Gentile. So his end statement is, for God has consigned all to disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. Praise God. All right, well, we'll do more with this. There's a lot more to say about Romans to understand it and read it, be able to read it through without having these bumps or confusions. So we'll see you at our next transmission.